Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Lisa Booth, Marie Harf, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Day 4 of the investigation into the deadliest mass shooting in America in our lifetimes. We're learning more about the killer, but not enough yet to find out his motive. Why? Why did he do it? It remains a mystery. But investigators are working feverishly for answers. They are skeptical he acted alone. Is an accomplice at large?
It's troublesome that this individual was able to move this amount of gear into a hotel room unassisted. It's troublesome for the amount of stuff that he had at both residences unassisted. So what could be more beneficial than to find people that are associated with him either by friendship or accomplice, and for us to determine that. Maybe he's, super yahoo that was working out all this on his own, but it'd be hard for me to believe that.
Lots of questions, including whether Stephen Paddock planned a getaway. Let's go to Trace Gallagher for more on that. Trace.
Jesse, the sheriff is now on the record saying that he believes Stephen Paddock had an accomplice. What's interesting about that is we know in the run-up to this attack inside the Mandalay Bay Hotel that Stephen Paddock was gambling very heavy in the days before that, sometimes 7, 8 hours at a time. And there are now numerous reports saying that while he was gambling, he was with a female companion who was not his girlfriend. The police are now trying to track down that female companion. We have also confirmed that Stephen Paddock did in fact rent a room in Chicago in August, the same time as the Lollapalooza concert. The hotel, the Blackstone, is a 21-story hotel that overlooks Grant Park, where the concert was being held. The hotel confirmed that he did make a reservation, though he did not show up for the reservation. We have also confirmed that, in fact, Stephen Paddock booked a hotel room in downtown Las Vegas the week before this shooting at another event, a hotel that overlooks the Life is Beautiful concert down there. And we should note that police think the shooter was, in all of this, trying to get out of it alive. Listen to this.
I believe because of his countermeasures placed in the peephole in the hallway, he observed the security guard, and he was in fear that he was about to be breached. So he was doing everything possible to figure out how he could escape at that point.
Did you see any evidence that he planned to survive this or try to escape?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is? What's that?
I can't tell you.
Though police will say there was no chance of him walking out of that hotel room alive. I just want to address something very quickly. We're talking about these aviation fuel tanks on the edge of McCarran Airport. They did have some bullet marks on those, and there was a report that he was actually, Stephen Paddock, trying to attack those aviation fuel tanks and blow them up. We don't have enough information to say, yes, he was trying to. We certainly don't have enough information to try and rule that out. We just know that some experts say it would be very hard to breach those tanks because they're double-lined, and he was very far away while he was shooting. Jesse.
Thanks a lot, Trace. All right, well, a lot to digest. Dana, we'll go to you first. Okay. Several targets that he talked about: Fenway Park, Chicago, another event in Las Vegas earlier. What does that tell you?
Well, it does, I guess, point to a lot of the premeditation, and that it wasn't spontaneous, right, and that it wasn't necessarily targeting country music fans per se. If he was looking at other possible venues, for maybe just looking for large urban centers that had a lot of people that were not going to be able to run from, if he had a vantage point that was higher than him. I think there's just I think the investigators are doing an amazing job. I also think they're completely overwhelmed, and the public is wanting answers, and they can't necessarily provide them right away. They're getting closer. The fact that we know now that he was at least seen with another woman at the time, hopefully they can track her down and find out some more information. In addition to that, I also think that when the investigators have been speaking, it's clear that they have more than they can say.
Right.
And so I feel like in a way they could stop doing as many press conferences, because if you don't have that much to say, Marie, you know this, it's like hard to stand up there and keep saying the same thing over and over, because people get frustrated, and then you get frustrated and you seem to look a little bit unprepared.
And you have to feed the beast.
When we saw some of that frustration last night at a press conference, because you know, they kept pushing back and saying, you guys, you're asking the same questions over and over again. We're doing our best. You want us to get this right. Please allow us the space and time to get it right. So you're absolutely correct in your assumption that, maybe they are doing too many press conferences because they do continue to get the same questions and getting a little frustrated.
And one of the things that the police chief alluded to about information he may know but he won't share is the escape plan.
Exactly.
I don't understand what he could have been thinking in terms of escape. A parachute to jump out the window? What do you think?
It's insane. I mean, that's a clinical term, but it is crazy that this guy would think he would do this and get away with it. But he also clearly was crazy to begin with if he decided to shoot at this many people with all these weapons he had accumulated, in a very pre-planned way, as Dana said. Clearly, this was not, he woke up one day and was mad at the world.
Right.
One of the places I think that will be interesting if the investigation goes is his online behavior. We haven't heard a lot about that. Did he have emails that talk at all about his state of mind? Did he have a Facebook account? Did he have a Twitter account? Was he on websites that, I don't know, right? I don't know any of these answers. Maybe that's a way for the investigators to get some answers here. And it's human nature for all of us to want an explanation, right? There can't not be one for someone to decide to do this. And I think that's what we're all grappling with today. We don't have that, and that's pretty unusual in this kind of mass shooting. In other ones, it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly.
What I'm interested in, Gutfeld, is this woman that he was seen with. And that reminds me of the conversation you and I had about that woman in the local news report who, I guess, told someone, you're all going to die soon. Yeah. Do you think that possibly could have been the same woman?
I don't know. It's hard in Vegas when you say there is a man seen with an unidentified woman. It's Vegas.
That was not his wife?
That was not his wife. The interesting thing that I noticed about this entire plan, I do think he wanted to get out. I think that perhaps the fuel tanks would have allowed him a way to escape if there was an explosion.
Interesting.
But the one thing in common with all these places, whether it was Fenway Park, Lollapalooza, or the Vegas target, was open-air targets. So you got to move away from the question of how do you stop a high IQ individual with no kids, a lot of money, the means and the fantasies to exact terror. Chances are you're not going to be able to stop his intent. You could slow him down in certain ways, but the solution is going to be enhanced security. 7.5 billion people on the planet. 99.9% of them are good. One person can actually create a larger carnage footprint, affecting thousands of lives by targeting an open-air arena. So the function is to protect citizens by identifying ways to do that using, I think, high-tech protection. I've been talking to John Yu about this. Drones, highly specific drones, robotics, things that we need to start talking about protection, security. Stop thinking about the weapon as much as you can to prevent and protect an area. The idea of specific SDI, to the defense of targets is really going to be the future, and it will be the industry that people should really think about. We should be rejecting fear, embracing security, and reducing the media footprint of fiends. So we spend less time talking about them and more time about enhancing the security. I think that's the way to go, because I don't think you can stop a high IQ individual with the means from exacting terror, because he planned this.
Yeah.
He thought of everything. And when somebody thinks of everything, even if you took away the bump stocks, which we're going to talk about later, even if you took that away, and that might have slowed down one aspect, he would have found a way to make them himself.
Especially with the ammonium nitrate in
the
car.
He had ammonia. He had other ways and means. He had thought about this. It's clear that, and you can't stop evil when evil decides to commit it. Now, the thing is, I kind of think he acted alone, because if you're acting in a larger group, it's part of a religious extremist group, because they all share the same ideology. It's hard to convince friends and acquaintances of doing something. It's hard to get somebody into a car that you're going to blow up, unless it's for a greater apocalyptic vision. And if there isn't one, then it's harder to say, hey, look, this is my dream, my fantasy is to do this. It's harder to get
on your own.
None of you are going to go with me.
No.
But if we're all radical Islamists, and I'm going, look, we're all going to get this jihad's going to take us straight to heaven, I can get all of you involved.
The other thing is the algorithm possibility. Like, could big data have figured out some sort of way, like if you're tracking weapons or in some way, is there a way that a robot could have identified it before?
Well, I think drones I think drones, in terms of protection, would they, if you were at an outdoor event, because outdoor events are going to go away if we don't solve this.
The U.S. is full of soft targets, too. Yeah. Malls, sporting events.
Well, even
that's
like
exactly
the
what you're
Chicago
talking
mayor,
about.
Rahm Emanuel, just said that they were triple-checking security because they have the marathon.
Well, and that's going to be obviously the concern throughout the country. But I am interested because there were reports that he was, potentially verbally abusive to Mary Lou. And so I'm wondering if there was a female accomplice, you could potentially see someone like that going along with him. If he is so, abusive in nature, verbally, who else? I mean, we don't know much about him in terms of that, but you could see a scenario involved where, he sort of, beats down someone so much, emotionally that potentially they go along with something
There
like this.
was also a very emotional moment yesterday, I believe. His name was Thomas Gunderson. He was in the kill box in the area where the event was and was visited by the president. Let's take a look.
Where's this thing at? Take good time. Take good time. This guy looks tough to me. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. How's it going?
Wow. So that gentleman, Thomas Gunderson, later wrote on the Facebook page, "I will never lie down when the president of this great country comes to shake my hand."
Absolutely.
And he's going to be on Hannity tonight, so hopefully everybody checks that out. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we've talked about the first responders and we've talked about a lot of the brave citizens. The one thing we don't talk about are the dispatchers, which are the police, fire, and hospital dispatchers that are just inundated with information and misinformation, and they're basically advising the people on the street. And in what I guess you would call an emergent situation, they were overwhelmed, and we often forget about that.
You know who else we haven't talked about? A lot of the doctors and the nurses that are in there performing amazing life-saving surgery, reconstructive surgery, people that have lost limbs, people have been shot through the eye, and they're doing an amazing job working around the clock to save a lot of people.
And the mental health professionals who will be dealing with this for decades. I mean, there are wounds that are physical and that will heal. They will take time, but the people who lived through this, the PTSD, the kind of mental health care they are going to have to do, we have to make sure.
I had this guy.
That's not overlooked.
I had a guy on the 2 o'clock show. He is a fireman for the Las Vegas Police Fire Department, but he was not on duty that night. He was a fan. He was there. So he became a first responder as well, trying to help everyone. And he was saying that he feels bad for the civilian heroes that were helping others because he, as a law enforcement and fire department official, has access to psychiatric help, but that all of those people that saw that trauma won't necessarily think that they need to seek out help. And he was hoping that we could all spread the message that if you were one of those people, you should definitely do that.
Yeah, very traumatizing experience. All right, are Democrats and Republicans close to an agreement on a new gun control measure following the massacre?
In Congress have long sparred on the subject of gun regulation in America, but could they be nearing an agreement on at least one new measure in the wake of the Las Vegas massacre, banning the sale of bump stocks designed to increase the rate of fire on semi-automatics? Well, the White House appears open to it as well.
We always welcome a thoughtful conversation on policy and issues. The Second Amendment is a bedrock within our Constitution, along with the First Amendment, and these rights must be protected, but we also are listening to, we heard yesterday, a number of these Republican senators, many of them saying that they support the Second Amendment. They are gun owners and hunters and sportsmen themselves. But the bump stock, I know that this is something that many legislators have been telling us, and I've read publicly, that they had never even heard of the device before, and they're in Congress. So many of them are open to a conversation.
Even the NRA today said it supports a new federal review on bump stocks. So, Jesse, maybe we have some agreement here, get something done this week.
Bipartisanship in Washington, it's amazing. I think we said on Monday and Tuesday, let's look at regulating bump stocks, and now they're going to do it. I think that's a good thing. It wouldn't prevent mass shootings, but it would maybe decrease the casualty count. It's a symbolic measure. It's not a fix-all, but the NRA supports it. I've seen a lot of Republican senators and congressmen, NRA-type people. They're very supportive of it. Ironically, it was President Obama's ATF that deregulated the bump stocks in 2010 and 2012, and the justification for that was people that lack hand mobility would use the bump stock. that could just be a ruse. That's one of those things like smoking weed is illegal, but the bong that you sell is legal, and it's for tobacco. One of those kind of things. So we'll see what happens. It also reminds me of, so something gets done under a Democratic administration, it blows up under a Republican administration, and then the Democrats blame the Republicans. That happens all the time. But I think when I've heard from people is when you go down this slippery slope, this is not a slippery slope because machine guns are already banned. When you add taxes and regulations and background checks and classes that you have to take, it makes gun ownership more expensive to the point where poor people can't afford all this stuff. Guns are expensive as it is, and it gets to the point where only wealthy people can afford firearms with all the onerous things that you lay on the purchase, and the poor people that want to defend their families and their homes can't afford it, and people are worried that the more you lay on the gun purchase, the harder it is for them to be able to attain it.
Marie, will Democrats take yes for an answer on bump stocks?
I'm not sure. I think that certainly we all agree on bump stocks. The NRA agrees on that. So I think we are where we are on that. But let's take a step back here. We need to have a conversation as a country on a bipartisan basis about why this keeps happening and how we can prevent it. There have been 1,500 mass shootings since Sandy Hook. We're the only country.
That's an exaggeration, and you know it.
It's not an exaggeration,
no,
Greg.
Define what your mass shooting is. Define it specifically.
The studies that I have looked at that I'm quoting from are over 4 people killed.
4 people killed in the United States, 1,500?
Yeah.
That also includes includes gang violence and things of that
armed robbery.
Those people are still all dead.
No, but I mean, you're
so
using.
So it doesn't make it okay. Wait,
no, you're using a specific term.
Yes, and I just defined it for you.
Yeah, but it's a miscalculation.
Well,
you're encompassing. You're using a specific term when you're talking about all these others.
Wait, listen, let me finish
for a
second.
Dishonest.
Whatever you want to call it, I don't think it's acceptable that we are the only developed country in the world where this number of people are killed by guns.
What about the machine gun attacks in France? They have a total ban, and they have machine gun attacks in Europe.
They don't have anywhere near the number,
You
Greg.
might want to take a look at the stats.
I will go stat
Here's
with you.
the thing.
But wait,
bump stocks, this is going to happen.
I will go
stat
with you.
The NRA has basically, said that today. Republicans have already introduced legislation. This is absolutely happening. The problem is, my understanding is you can essentially replicate this on your own. And therein lies the problem, is because bad people will find a way to hurt people. You look at cities that have very strict gun laws, whether it's Chicago or Baltimore, 4,300 shooting victims last year in Chicago, 900 in Baltimore. Nice, France, you take guns out of the equation. You take a truck, kill 86 people, injure 250. You look at the Oklahoma City bombing, killing 186 people, more than 680. And then also you look at the fact that, let's go through some of the things.
But you know, when someone sets a bomb off, you guys don't blame the bomb. You blame the person.
But we regulate
shoots
being able to buy things.
Someone with a gun, you blame the gun.
Let me ask you a question,
what proposals are going to do anything?
Can I ask you a question, or for anyone? Why has the balance shifted so far in this country that we are so obsessed with the rights of gun owners and don't focus as much on the rights of Americans to not get shot and killed?
I think because the suggestions you make don't work. Wherever a gun ban
then let's find ones that do, Greg.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Let's find them. Let's just not say never,
I will respond to that.
Should we do anything.
Okay, number one, wherever there's a gun ban, homicide rates, murder rates go up. There are stats on that. It's pretty clear. All right, so now we're sitting here talking about something about a bump stock. No one's heard of it until now, except, however, it's been around for a long time. Act on bump stocks, fine. It's a no-lose situation. If the device was able to broaden the carnage, then ban it. However, wiser folks will tell you they're notoriously unreliable, and they can't be made. They can't be homemade. So what you're going to have is a symbolic gesture that may not do any good, but if it does a little good, I agree with you. Let's do bump stocks. But you said something interesting. It's time to have a real conversation. So what you did was you shifted from bump stocks to basically what the road you're going down to, which is let's ban guns.
No,
but also, isn't the real conversation about something
really
deeper
unfair.
here, though?
But
you used misleading stats, which were unfair.
I don't think they're misleading. And look, the litmus test can't be for us to agree on any legislation or any regulation that it has to stop every mass shooting.
No, but
that
the
can't be the
proposals that are being.
test.
You look at background
I agree. Let's go after bump stocks. I'm with you.
Okay, but you also look at background checks and you look at someone like this guy. He didn't have a previous criminal history, mental health history. That is often the case with this. You also look at the fact for a lot of these mass shootings, even the ones that you would describe 4 or more, typically happen with handguns, okay? So even if you got rid of things like AR-15, okay, so our handguns next. So I think that's where Republicans are thinking about that. And the problem is, you remark about seeing some, an increase in, or at least what appears to be an increase in some of these mass shootings. Don't you think that means there's maybe a bigger underlying problem with society as a whole, that people are evil and feeling compelled to do things like that? So maybe those are the conversations we need to be having, are societal and outside of anything that gun control.
We need to have all of them.
I will go back to the fact that there are 7.5 billion people on this planet. One of them was this fiend. So, figure that out.
Or we're going to have a stat off.
Stat off tonight.
It's going to be really
that's a great
commercial break.
I think we have a new show.
Tomorrow.
We have a new show.
Stat off.
It should be on at 3 a.m. when you're coming home from a bar. It should be called Stat Off. And we should all be drinking.
And we'll be drinking.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Have your Google ready. All right, Tucker will be interviewing Chris Cox from the NRA at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then at 9 p.m., Sean talks to the NRA's Wayne LaPierre. Ahead, there are also suggestions about scrapping the Second Amendment altogether. Two people with very different politics in agreement on that next.
Back now to the push for more gun laws in the wake of the Las Vegas massacre. Some people, like filmmaker Michael Moore, call the Second Amendment, quote, outdated. He wants it repealed and replaced. Conservative New York Times columnist Bret Stephens is actually in agreement with him. Stephens says he's never understood the, quote, conservative fetish for the Second Amendment. He wrote, Americans who claim to be outraged by gun crimes should want to do something more than tinker at the margins of a legal regime that most of the developed world rightly considers nuts. Gun ownership should never be outlawed, but it doesn't need a blanket constitutional protection either. Okay, Jesse.
Yes.
What say you? Repeal and replace?
I just want to make everybody aware.
Not on this issue.
That guy is a conservative.
Bret Stephens?
He's a New York Times conservative. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
And the Times got a lot of criticism when they hired him because he's a conservative.
Oh, yeah.
Now all those readers
really
love
coming through. Exactly.
Wait till he writes on climate change. Then they hate
that's
him.
the real issue.
So
what do you
got
think?
run out of the building. Listen.
What do you think?
What? Hundreds of thousands of Americans die each year because of heart disease and diabetes. You're going to ban fast food. 1 million people die from alcohol. You're going to ban booze. When someone gets stabbed, do you blame the knife? No. When someone hits someone with their car, do you blame the car? No, you blame the person. But then why, when you shoot someone, you blame the gun? It makes no sense. I researched the segment, got some great stats. Stat off.
Finally, for once.
2/3 of gun deaths in the United States are suicides.
That's right.
Let that sink in. 1 in 5 were young men aged 15 to 34 killed in homicides, gang-related, something along those lines. Usually illegal guns, handguns. Most mass shootings are an infinitesimal percentage of the gun deaths, and most homicides are committed with handguns, not AR-15. So that should put everything into perspective. You guys were arguing in the break. I just want to make sure everybody understands this. When people get shot in Chicago on the weekend, dozens, the left says nothing. But when the same amount of people are killed by one shooter, they go after the guns. What's the difference? What's the difference?
I don't actually think that the left says nothing. I think when you hear
I haven't heard anything.
But I think you don't watch MSNBC a lot, probably.
But couching
no one does.
But wait, let me read one more thing from Bret Stephens. He said, from a law and order standpoint, more guns means more murder. From a personal safety standpoint, more guns means less safety. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I think that this column was brilliant. First, he cites a deeply flawed study in which the correlations are off. They actually, the study didn't look at gun ownership and homicides. It looked at a measure of gun suicides and gun homicides. An example of why this is flawed is that if you look at gun ownership among women, you see very little increase in suicides by gun among women, so it's a weird flaw. Then, after he does that, this is the brilliant part of the column, he sucks in all the liberal readers saying this flawed study. Then he goes on and debunks every single flimsy argument the left has, revealing their shallow suggestions about it could not stop any fiend if possible. So then he does the genius move. He suggests political suicide at the end because he's really smart, this Bret Stephens. He says he's challenging Kimmel, he's challenging the Schumers to say what they really want to say, ban guns. He went to the place that they are too chicken to go to because they prefer to hide behind the rhetoric of demonization that if you don't just go for a little bit of gun control, you must be evil. He's going, ban it, ban it, ban it.
Right.
Political
Yes,
reverse psychology.
He was laying a trap.
He is a conservative.
Have I just fallen into it?
I changed my opinion.
But I think couching this as a Republican Democrat issue is just wrong. I mean, Josh Kraushire, who's a really good reporter, I've worked with him in the past, has a great article saying why gun control is a losing issue for Democrats. And you think about the fact that Wall Street Journal has a poll, back to stats, 48% of households have a gun in them, right? So, I mean, that's a significant, we're talking about almost half of this country. And basically his argument or article points out the fact that you look at some of the 6 senators that are running in states for re-election, Democrats in these red states, have been essentially silent on this issue. Even in Nevada, the Democrat congresswoman who is challenging Dean Heller has also been silent on this issue as well. So I think just couching this as a Republican-Democrat issue is just wrong on its face.
Dana, how do you think this, I mean, I hate to jump to 2018 in politics, but it's coming faster than we think. Do you think this will continue to be an issue? How do you think, if at all, this plays into things?
Well, I think certainly if you just even look at the Virginia governor's race that's happening in about 6 weeks, Michael Bloomberg's group that is basically wanting to ban guns, well, they might disagree with that, but they have poured so much money into that race, and that's just one example. So the NRA, all the groups on the left and the right, the members of Congress try to raise money. Chris Murphy, already the senator from Connecticut, already doing fundraising off of this tragedy in the massacre in Las Vegas. Yes, I absolutely think it's going to continue. I do think Bret Stephens was laying a trap for the Democrats, and they follow into it. And if you read that Josh Kraushire column from yesterday, basically he's saying the smart Democrats, the ones that want to get reelected, will stay away from it.
Yeah, Bret Stephens,
for bump stock.
sneaky little man.
Sneaky Stephens.
Sneaky man.
Well, I think we've all put a lot of statistics on the table tonight.
It was a stat off.
It's a stat off, and it's not over yet. But coming up next.
Actually, it is.
Hillary Clinton on a new tear about President Trump when we return.
Like a drunk neighbor in your front yard, Hillary Clinton wandered onto yet another TV show to crap on the president.
You know, I was right in the middle of our government responding to the horrible effects of the earthquakes in Haiti. So I knew what we're capable of doing. And, you know, I waited because I thought, you know, they don't need me saying, hey, send naval assets, get the hospital ship Comfort down there. But a couple of days later, nothing was happening. So I tweeted, if they aren't the highest priority of your government in responding to such a terrible natural disaster, what are you people spending your time doing? Yeah. Right? Golfing, tweeting, watching cable TV?
She's a real piece of work. Look, I don't blame her. She's still angry, still bitter, still Hillary. Apparently finding her grandchildren boring. She cruises the airwaves, slamming the guy who beat her still, as people suffer and the guy who won consoles them. At times she sounds like she's campaigning, but for what? It's like this is high school and she's vying for most likely to clear a room with her blood-curdling laugh. There's tragedies going on from Vegas to Puerto Rico, and Hillary sees fit to remind people what she would have done if she were in charge. She would have done something, but during the election, she did almost nothing but lose. She's like a dumped ex who keeps writing long letters to the guy's parents, reminding them how their son screwed up. Oh, but I saved the best for last. You're gonna love this. Check out the female writers at Jimmy Fallon writing Hillary thank you notes, warning to viewers, have a bucket nearby.
Thank you, Hillary Clinton, for handling this difficult transition with more grace than I ever could have imagined. That being said, call me day or night and I will be there with a gallon of ice cream and 2 spoons to tell you, girl, you are so much better than him.
Thank you, Hillary, for always sticking to the issues, even as people criticize you for superficial things like your hair, your wardrobe, and your appearance. You showed girls everywhere that politics isn't a popularity contest, because if it were, you would have won by about 3 million votes.
I was with her, I'm still with her, and right now I literally am with her. Can I take a selfie?
Yes, Becky, don't do this. She's taking a selfie. All right, take it.
Can I give you a hug?
Yes! Yes!
That is amazing. They're treating her like a lonely friend who lost one of her 6 cats. No, that's not Joan of Arc, not even Joan Crawford. It's Hillary Clinton, the reason why we have Donald Trump. And the more that we see of her, the more reassured Americans are that they made the right choice. So Hillary, there's the door. To quote Sam Malone of Cheers, you don't have to go home. but you can't stay here. All right, Dana, there has to be something better for her to do.
But I have to say, you've written several books. You've done book tours. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
I mean, even our former
Not for
colleagues.
me.
I've never seen anything like this. This is the longest book tour in the world.
Yes, exactly.
On every night and getting all this attention.
I don't know. Jesse, those letters kind of show you the mindset of those who work in TV, comedy, and entertainment. It's kind of cute. I mean, it was cute and sad, and cute and sad.
Gutfeld, I don't even want to say anything about this.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to get in trouble if I say what I really think about that.
They didn't read your letter on the air.
That was really...
that one got lost
That was embarrassing. That was humiliating, and they should be mad at Hillary because she blew it and should have beaten Donald Trump. First of all, Hillary's not only crooked, she's a liar. They had the naval assets in place outside the coast of Puerto Rico. They had the hospital ship Comfort off the coast of Puerto Rico. That's not true. I also want to know something. Has the Clinton Foundation donated to Harvey to Puerto Rico? I want to see the receipts. Show me the receipts. Has Hillary been to Vegas? Does the book tour not go to Vegas? She could easily be at Vegas comforting victims, no, but she's the one tweeting. She's hawking her book for cash while Trump's comforting victims and Trump's bailing out people. So I don't want to hear it anymore. She's a punchline.
Well, hey, I want to ask Marie, because I think it's kind of her fault. I mean, she should have won.
Yeah.
I mean, she had the opportunities. If she had gone to Wisconsin, she should have won. So
well,
they
there's a
should be
bunch of things
admonishing
that
her.
could have been done different.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, there are legitimate criticisms with some of the things President Trump has done. And I think the fact that Hillary is making them should not mean the rest of us should not take them seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just laugh them off. I understand that was like even I was uncomfortable with that.
Yeah,
segment,
I could see you. You were getting nauseous.
But one thing you said in your intro, I mean, you said that every time they see Hillary Clinton, American voters are more confident in their decision. I actually, if you look at the president's poll numbers...
They're going up.
Wait a second.
From the basement. I mean, they're so far down,
He still
Greg.
beats her. He still beats her today, if you look at the poll numbers.
And I've also
so
said,
that's not true.
I've also said, well, his poll numbers, you would not want his poll numbers. You agree with that?
Well,
I don't know. Jesse
Congress would love his poll numbers.
But Hillary Clinton is not the future of the Democratic Party. I've said that many times. And so while I think, yes, it's interesting that she was the first female nominee, in 10 years I want to read her book. I'm ready to move on as a Democrat.
But you say there are some things she could have done. I think visiting Wisconsin is like a really big thing.
It's
what she clearly
the Russians went there.
But also, how
exactly, and that's a problem for our democracy.
So the Russians have better advertising than the Clinton campaign.
And where did they get
I bet they weren't advertising in Omaha, Nebraska, like she was instead of Wisconsin and Michigan.
Data?
But here's the thing. Hold
They
on
just
a second.
advertised in blue states. That's all they did.
But look, how tone deaf is this as well for her to be speaking and criticizing the president yesterday while he was in Vegas, comforting the victims of the mass shooting, not to mention the fact that he was also in Puerto Rico on Tuesday. So instead of uniting the country at a time where we really need to be unified in the wake of something so tragic and horrible, she's dividing the country. And we also saw that from Michelle Obama, who recently made comments criticizing the Republican Party and saying that basically we're responsible for all the bad, we're allowed
to criticize.
Not by saying the entirety of the Republican Party are all white and men. And that's part of the poisonous part of politics now. It's divisive.
That's what we do. We do it, they do it, everybody does
Thank
it.
you.
We just do it better.
All right.
Just wait till 2018, my friend.
Yes.
I have all the time in the world.
Bernie will still be around. All right, ahead. One of CNN's star anchors takes issue with referring to the Vegas mass murderer as a madman. That's our E-Block. Next.